HOA banned me from digging a well on my own farm, so I cut off water for their 1,500 goats. Have you ever been told you can't dig a hole on your own land? Because I have. And the way I flipped the script on the entire HOA goat empire, let's just say they never saw the dry spell coming. Name's Levi McAllister, fifth-generation farmer. Born on this land, baptized in this dirt, and I'll probably die digging something out here too. Our family farm, Whisper Ridge Acres, sits on the edge of the county line just outside the official reach of the High Prairie HOA, or so I thought. It all started one dry spring morning. I just finished breakfast bacon crispy, eggs runny, and stepped out to check the lower field. The grass was browning early. My pecan trees were thirstier than ever, and the old creek that used to run across our boundary had been dry since Christmas. I needed a water source. So I called on my buddy Ray from Town License Driller, and we set up a small well rig near the southern boundary line. Legal. Permitted. On my own land. He drilled maybe 20 feet before trouble came storming down the gravel path in a cloud of dust and entitlement. She was huge physically, emotionally, spiritually. HOA President Karen Dumont. You could hear her wheezing before the Subaru even stopped. Her visor flopped as she climbed out, lips curled like she'd bitten a lemon soaked in vinegar. "You are trespassing without equipment," she screeched, stomping straight toward Ray. "And this well is illegal under HOA Code subsection 14B. Ray blinked. "Ma'am, I don't even live here." "Then pack it up," she barked, "before I report you to the county." Now, I'll admit I tried to stay calm. I even offered her a sweet tea I had in the truck. But when she smacked the cup out of my hand and screamed, "You don't own the groundwater," I saw red. See, Karen believed that because the HOA grazing pasture complete with 1,500 of their community-raised goats was adjacent to my fence, she had a right to dictate what I could do with the aquifer beneath my own dirt. Never mind the fact that Whisper Ridge was deeded in 1894 long before her HOA bylaws were a twinkle in some bureaucrat's eye. She filed a formal cease and desist within 48 hours. Claimed my well would upset the hydration balance of the communal livestock project. And here's the kicker somehow. The judge issued a temporary injunction. No drilling, no pumping. But what Karen didn't know was this. The existing water line running to the HOA goat paddock? Yeah, that ran through a century-old pipe buried under my soil. Legacy pipe, one that I legally controlled. So I flipped a valve. One twist. And just like that 500 goats went dry. Oh, the panic. You should have seen it. Karen waddling around in a floppy sun hat, screaming at volunteer teens holding cracked hoses, waving a clipboard like it was a weapon. They tried everything: tanker trucks, emergency wells. One dude even showed up with jug from Costco. But the moment those goats began bleeding and kicking dust, it became clear. The water war had begun. I didn't gloat. Not at first. I kept quiet, tended my crops, and waited. But then Karen called the sheriff on me. Claimed I'd sabotaged critical infrastructure. Sheriff Pete took one look at the piping maps I had laminated and framed thanks to Grandpa's obsessive record-keeping and let out a low whistle. "You got to buy the pipes, Levi," he muttered, shaking his head. Karen didn't back down. She doubled down. She marched into the county office and petitioned to seize a 3-foot strip of my land via emergency HOA right-of-way. Said it was for livestock welfare. The room went silent when she filed it. Even the clerk blinked like she'd misheard her. That's when I brought out the real bombshell. Turns out those pipes, they weren't just carrying water. They were also mapped and monitored by the State Agricultural Hydrology Program. Why? Because years ago, Whisper Ridge was selected as a test site for aquifer resilience studies. Any interference with the water system, intentional or not, was subject to federal review. Karen had just committed a federal-level obstruction by filing her fake claim. And it got better, or worse for her. One of the a volunteer sweet kid named Danny slipped me a photo. Karen, in her sweaty pink tank top, had rerouted a gutter line from the HOA clubhouse straight into the community water storage tanks, which, by the way, were not up to code. We're talking algae, bugs, and probably some prehistoric bacteria in there. That twist hit harder than drought. I sent the photo and my water rights docs to the state office. 3 days later, an environmental compliance officer showed up, and behind him, news vans. It was about 10 a.m. when the state compliance officer stepped out of his truck, adjusted his badge, and walked straight toward Karen, who was screaming at two teenagers trying to drag a plastic kiddie pool full of bottled water across a goat pen. "Ma'am," he said firmly, flipping open his leather-bound credentials, "I'm with the Department of Agricultural Water Safety and Infrastructure Oversight. I'm going to need to see the construction and sanitation permits for all secondary water rerouting on this property." Karen blinked like she'd just been slapped with a frozen salmon. What permits? This is community land. I am the elected president of this HOA. He didn't even blink. You're also the one listed on a filed obstruction complaint regarding well interference and misappropriation of private utility access. And this, he pointed at the rotting algae-covered tank behind the shed, is what we call a Category 3 biohazard. Karen's face flushed so fast it went from boiled lobster to fire truck red. Her voice cracked when she tried to argue. "That photo was staged. That's not even my gutter." "Oh," he said, lifting a tablet, "because this footage taken by a registered drone on May 14 clearly shows you ordering Danny there to extend the gutter piping into the tank. And here's the HOA financial record. Looks like you used HOA funds to buy those supplies." Danny, standing off to the side, nodded sheepishly. "I tried to tell her it was illegal, sir. She said I'd lose my community service hours." That did it. The crowd began to gather. Residents, news crews, even a few local farmers who'd heard the drama on CB radio. Karen tried to retreat inside the clubhouse, but an elderly woman named Mrs. Belho had been part of the original ranch co-op before Karen turned it into her personal empire stood in her path. "Not so fast, honey," she said, planting her cane on the steps. "You banned Levi from watering his own roots. Now we're going to watch yours dry up too." 3 days later, the front page of the High Prairie Times read, "Goat drought scandal exposes illegal HOA water theft." Karen was suspended indefinitely from her post, pending a full state investigation. Turns out, the water theft had gone on for months, quietly been tapping into multiple adjacent properties through legacy lines, then charging the HOA for water recovery infrastructure. Levi? He got a formal letter of apology from the county, full well access reinstated, and poetic justicia $15,000 grant from the state to help fund his aquifer monitoring system. Oh, and remember the drone footage? Yeah, it went viral. Not just because of the scandal, but because halfway through the clip the goats staged a full-on mutiny. Apparently, the lead goat, a massive black and white beast named Scruffy, had butted the gate open and led the others in a full stampede right through the HOA's prized native plant demonstration garden, which had been part of Karen's $80,000 beautification budget. The clip ended with Karen screaming, face down in mud, arms flailing as goats trampled over her paperwork. She tried to sue Levi for emotional damages. The judge laughed. Literally, the HOA board was dissolved within 2 months. A community vote reinstated cooperative land rules from the original founding charter. Levi was asked to help draft the new bylaws. And every spring since, the town has hosted a little event called the Goat Gulch Water Festival featuring a dunk tank, free well drilling education booths, and a raffle for the Karen Award. A gold-plated watering came with a goat kicking it over. The kicker? Karen had to move. The irony? She ended up in a trailer park 2 counties over where her next-door neighbor happened to be Danny's grandma, who, according to local gossip, installed a sprinkler system just to test Karen's restraint. So let me ask you this. Was I wrong to turn off the water? But did karma just finally run through the pipes? The end.